name's Rob. This is my 2013 GTR. We're gonna hit the Dragy today, and we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna go for a ride. I mean, clearly the R35's been done a million different times. Like, this is nothing new, but it's relatively new to me. I mean, I did a ton of research for a long time before I even got this car, because I've been wanting one since they came out. Yeah, I wanted one before it came out. I wanted a R34 or R33 or a 32. Right. But you know, 20 years ago, they were unobtainium, and then we finally got one here. And it was too expensive, so it was still unobtainium. But now that I'm older and I can afford one, I went out and got one as soon as I possibly could. So nice. I'm 10 years too late to the scene, but I don't care. I'm having a great time.
Hey, that's all that matters, man.
That's right.
I'd rather be late than never show up.
Yep.
If you're interested in buying a GTR, you're watching the right video. Even if you're not, the information the owner is about to share is very fascinating and proves how great of vehicles these really are. At the end of the video, we will use the Dragy to measure quarter-mile time and speed.
So yeah, what would you have to say to someone who's watching this video because they're about to buy a GTR or interested in buying one?
That is a great question. So I researched this platform since I heard of its existence back in like 2008. And I wanted one ever since, and I literally was biding my time waiting for the price to come down and my income to go up enough for them to match to where I could put myself in this car. Right. Like countless hours of research. So here's what I would tell you. Understand how the car works so that you know what to check. If you have a friend that owns a GTR, bring your friend. Because if you've never driven one of these cars, they make a lot of weird, clunky noises that you would never hear in any other car. And if you don't know what's normal and what's abnormal, you could end up buying a car with a serious problem. When I first bought this car, I had never driven a GTR before, and I drove 4 hours to buy it in Raleigh. But man, the first time I drove it, you want to talk about paranoid? Like, oh my God, what was that noise? What was that noise? You know, what's this? What's this? What's that? And I've had this car for a little over a year. Even like at the 6-month mark, I was still stressing over some of the clunks and noises that it made. I ran into a guy who also had one. His car was a lot newer and a lot younger and had way less miles. And he's like, you wanna go for a ride in my car? I'm like, yeah. So I go ride in his car, guess what? Pretty much sounded the same. And his car had 30,000 miles, and it was like a 2020.
Wow.
Or maybe it was a 2017. It was the facelift version, the EBA. Yeah. And he had upgraded turbos and everything, but he was still on stock engine, stock transmission. So this car's at 99,000 miles as of right now. It's lived a hard life. I mean, this thing's had its ass handed it to it every time it gets driven. I haven't been nice to it. I bought it at 70,000. So I've already put almost 30,000 miles on this car in 1 year. Yes, I daily drive the crap out of this thing. But I will tell you this though, I don't care what anybody says, GTRs are freaking reliable. This is one of the most reliable cars I've ever owned. The only thing I've ever done to this car is put speed parts on it and oil changes and filter changes. That is it. It hasn't needed anything. I haven't had to service the AC. We've been riding around this car on a hot 90+ degree day, and we're not breaking a sweat. And you can daily drive this thing. It's not a Lambo, it's not a McLaren. And when it breaks, the parts, like the regular parts, they're not that bad. You know, I think the alternator that's on this car is the same alternator that's on the 370Z possibly. I'm not sure. The brake jobs are a little expensive, but the brakes are so big that they're on vacation for daily driving. The only time you really use the brakes is when you're stopping from triple digits. Yeah. And then you know, how often you don't really normally do that back to back, so they don't really get super hot. End of the day, you're gonna buy a GTR, do your homework, definitely do your homework. And as far as buying a modified car versus a stock car, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would buy a car that was already built.
Yeah.
I'd buy a car that already had the short block done, already had a Shep 1K transmission, already had it done, because they're not much more. And if you look at the time and the hassle and the money of doing that stuff yourself, you're better off just buying one that's already had it done. It's already a proven runner.
Yeah, like someone already spent the money for you almost.
Exactly. Like this car already had the exhaust on it when I bought it.
Yeah.
It's like a $5,000 exhaust.
Oof.
And it didn't affect the price of the car.
Yeah.
I got the exhaust for free. If you're buying a car that's already been modified or already been tuned, learn how to data log the car, or ask the owner if he can data log a third gear pull, and then take that data log and send it to whatever tuner is your buddy, or anyone you know that's like a really knowledgeable engine tuner or car guy, and let him look over the data log. The most important thing is knock counts. So on the GTR, the way it does it is there's a knock threshold for each cylinder.
Yeah.
And then every time that knock threshold gets met, it pulls back. Dynamic ignition timing, I think is what it's called. If you're driving around
That's good.
a GTR and you're test driving it, it's almost imperative that you get on the highway, put it in fourth gear, and let it eat through fourth and fifth. Yeah. Because that's when you're going to find the bad tune.
The long gears where you're really in it.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about hurting the car, because if it has a bad tune, guess what? It's going to chop the throttle on you. It's not going to let you blow it up. Yeah. Which is another thing I love about the GTR, is it's set up to not hurt itself. If you do something dumb and the transmission feels like you're going to hurt it, you know what it does? Limp mode.
Yeah.
You're done. It'll stop you in the middle of a pass. It'll take off first gear. It'll sense the ETS clutch for the front wheels overheat because you did something dumb, and it'll just shut the throttle off on you. It won't let you hurt it, you know?
That's good.
And like I was talking about earlier, you know, a lot of the myths of these cars having bad transmissions, it's almost like people say, well, nitrous blows motors up. Well, no, nitrous doesn't blow motors up. People using nitrous incorrectly blows motors up.
Right.
So what I would say is, people operating their GTR outside of the envelope for which the transmission was designed, that's what breaks the transmission.
I got you.
If you operate within the envelope for what it's designed to do, man, this thing's bulletproof.
Nice.
I've launched this car at least 70 times since I've owned it in the last year. And now, obviously, you don't want to like back to back launch it.
Yeah.
You want to give the transmission time to pull that heat out with the fluid. You know, but like I said, operate within the envelope. Right. And if you do that, dude, these things are solid, man.
Yeah.
Solid.
That's awesome.
So when you launch these cars, and I can't speak on anything other than my own experience, I'm sure like bigger, higher horsepower cars or cars with tires, sticky tires, have maybe a different process. But for me, the way this car's tuned with EcuTech and the traction control and everything, you have the 3 switches down here on the GTR control panel, and you've got your transmission switch, your suspension switch, and then your vehicle dynamic control. So the consensus online in the forums is to put the suspension into comfort, because it squats and helps you get traction, especially with street tires on asphalt. And I've actually experimented and tried all 3 different modes, and at 60 foot's better, and I get a better ET and comfort.
Nice.
I haven't done it at a track on a prep surface.
Right.
Only on unprepped surfaces, but I imagine it translates. The biggest fear is wheel hop.
Oh yeah.
You know, you wheel hop a car, you're gonna detonate driveline point parts either really fast or immediately. Since this thing's on street tires, it does sidestep a little in the butt.
Yeah.
In first.
I love the way an all-wheel drive car crab walks a little bit.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this car that a lot of people don't know is that their GTRs are actually rear-wheel drive biased. The front wheels are assist, so it's not like a Subaru or an Evo,
right,
where it's full-time all-wheel drive. Give it some throttle, it's still not using them. We're in rear-wheel drive right now, so it only gives you front tire when you need it.
See,
which is good for fuel mileage, and also for you don't have the parasitic loss of powering the wheels at speed.
This actually has clutches. It's not a torque converter.
No, there's no converter.
Yeah.
No. So it's got three wet clutches.
Okay.
Okay. There's clutch A, clutch B, and then the ETS clutch. The ETS clutch sends power to the front wheel. So that's your 4-wheel drive clutch.
I got you.
Clutch A and B are the odd and even gears respectively. So one of the clutches is reverse, first, third, and fifth.
That's
the
cool.
other clutch is 2, 4, and 6. So the reason why it can shift so fast is the synchro is already engaged. The gear is locked in before it even chooses the gear. What it does is it opens one clutch and grabs the other one.
Okay.
So it goes,
That's cool.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the reason why the gear changes so fast is because the gear is already in.
Yeah.
So the only time that bites you in the ass is when when the car is trying to figure out what gear you're going to want next. So it has to predict what gear it thinks you want based off how you're driving.
Oh, I got you.
So once you understand that algorithm, or I use the word algorithm, maybe that's the wrong word, but once you understand how the car is just trying to figure you out, you can adjust your driving style to make it easier for the car to figure it out.
Gotcha.
And then once you do that, oh man, you never have a delayed shift. So there are times when it might think you're going to downshift, but you're actually going to upshift. And then you command the upshift with the lever. And it takes a little, there's a delay because it's got to unengage. Like if you're in fourth, it'll have to unengage third and then re-engage fifth before it can switch gears.
I got you.
So that can delay things. But if you drive the car and the car understands what you're trying to do, instantaneous shifts all the time.
That's cool.
It's awesome. It's like driving a dirt bike sometimes. And if you have the launch control tuned properly with good traction control or really good tires or both, the way it makes the car leave from a stop is rather impressive. It's really impressive.
That's cool.
And I think a lot of the old hate on the GTR for the transmission, I think a lot of those rumors have been debunked now because it's been, the car is a seasoned chassis now. It's been out forever.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of people when I talk to them and they, oh, that's a cool car, and we're talking, and they'll be like, oh man, what about that transmission though? So it's still out there. There's still people that think this thing has a weak transmission or whatever. It doesn't have a weak transmission. I'll put that on camera right now.
Yeah.
The GTR absolutely does not have a weak transmission. The issues with that where all of that comes from is Nissan gave the US market a launch control that was not the same as the launch control that they advertised.
Gotcha.
Because they didn't want people to blow the car up.
Yeah.
So people found a way around it by turning the VDC off.
Yeah.
And putting it into free from mud and sand mode. And because the car wasn't meant to launch like that, a lot of people smoked their clutch packs. And that's what was killing those cars. And then the other thing that was killing the transmissions was there's these clips that go on the solenoids that select the gears. And the clips were allowing the solenoids to kind of get out of alignment. And it would stop people from being able to shift into certain gears. But all of that got fixed in the 2012 model year.
Okay.
So the different generations of the R35 are CBA, which is 09 to 11. And then you have DBA, which is 12 to, I think, 16. And then I think it's 17, it turns into EBA, which is the facelift car. The interior slightly changes and the front of the car slightly changes. And I don't know what they're calling the new one, which is I think a 2020 and on. I don't know what they're calling.
Yeah.
But I mean, essentially, the powertrain is exactly the same. The suspension is basically exactly the same. They might have done some small little tweaks here and there, but they're all the same car. Yeah, if you buy a 09 and you pull the tranny out and send it to Shep and have him update it and send it back to you, boom, you might as well have a DBA at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they did minor changes on the engine. Mostly it's little bolt-on stuff. I think the air inlets, they changed them in 12 that bolt up to the turbo to give it more, more flow or whatever. And I think that bumped power. I think they changed the tune a little bit, which bumped power. So this car it's full bolt-on the 85. That includes exhaust intake. I've upgraded the intercooler, which they say you don't have to do, but I did it. Just because it gets so hot and muggy here in the summer. And then I've got a speed density conversion and the MAFs are deleted. And then fuel system is injectors and then twin pumps, which it comes factory twin pumps, but I upgraded both pumps. And then I did a hot wire kit for the pumps, E85
Nice.
sensor, fuel pressure fail safe, and then I got aftermarket blow off valves that don't recirculate.
Gotcha.
Because you know, my inner racer wanted to hear that.
Well, definitely sounds good. Stock turbos?
Yep, bone lickety stock. I can't make any more power on these turbos.
Yeah.
Like they're out of breath.
Right. How much boost is that?
Well, today it's so freaking hot. We're lucky to even hit 20 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
I'd have to, I don't know. Let's look real quick. Yeah, about 21. So one thing I noticed about the GTR is that the normal operating temperature for the engine is 175 degrees. It usually fluctuates between like 172 and like 176, which most cars, it's 200 plus.
Yeah.
These cars, it's a lot lower.
What is your favorite feature about the car?
I mean, having all of these gauges is really cool.
Yeah.
Flipping
like that
through
too.
and being able to look, because I'm a gauge nut, man. I want to know. I like to know.
Yeah.
And I think it might be partly like anxiety driven, because the car's worth a lot of money and it's very expensive to repair like major parts that get like cracked and destroyed. So like I want to know what the transmission temp is at any moment. I want to know what the oil temp is, not just the coolant temp, which most cars have. Most cars you'll never know what the oil temp is unless you data log it or you add that gauge. A lot of that stuff, like this car has it, and it's got a bunch of stuff I'll never use. But like, I don't need a G meter, but it is cool to have one.
Yeah.
So I would say like this display with all the gauges that you can cycle through, and they're customizable.
Oh, that's cool.
So like each position, like the number 3 position gives you one big gauge, which obviously you want the boost gauge there. Why would you have anything different?
Yeah.
And then I have coolant temp and trans temp. And the only reason I have those is so that I know that I'm fully warmed up to be able to launch the car or put it in GTR mode. Because they say that you should never launch the car if the transmission temp's not above 140. I typically don't launch the car unless it's fully warmed up. Because I can wait a couple minutes or drive the car around a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably my favorite feature.
Right.
As a car in general though, like, it's a race car. The car's noisy. It's clunky. It's noisy. It's a race car. Like, it's definitely a car, like, you have to love this car to daily drive this car. You know what I mean? Or like, if you weren't an enthusiast, you'd be like, man, I'm just going to take my Accord to work today because I don't want to deal with driving that thing in traffic or whatever. But it doesn't bother me, man. I daily drive this thing. When I worked up in VA, I was driving it, 100 miles a day.
Yeah.
I just don't care. I'm never going to sell it, so I don't care about the mileage.
How fast have you gotten the car up to?
Okay, so 177, but I want to explain how that happened. So last month, there was a Ducati SP1, a friend had it, and that's a really fast bike. And I was like, you know what, let me see, do I got a shot against this thing? So I talked to him, and he was more than happy to bust my ass. So we went out, we rolled from 40. And surprisingly enough, I got out in front of him by probably 4 car lengths pretty quick. And I think it's because his front tire was trying to come up and he had to keep the tire down, so he had to kind of limit the throttle a little bit. But I actually stayed in front of him until about 147. And then he came past me and I stayed in it and followed him. He says he hit 186. I hit 177, but we shut down at that point just because it was kind of scary. Like, that's really fast.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah. I know the car can hit the advertised top speed. I know that it can. It probably could go faster.
Yeah.
Because like it never stopped pulling. Like, it was pulling hard as shit at 177. It wanted to keep going, which was cool. It was really cool. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, reset the Dragy. Here we go.
A 10.5 is super impressive on the streets, and I could have kept this video going for at least another 20 minutes as Rob has an endless amount of information to put out on this car. However, we will be back to hear more about it when we put it on a dyno and then back again to line it up against some other fast cars. So stay tuned for all of that.
Thanks for checking out my 13 GTR today with East Coast Garage. Thanks for having me on the show, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one.